Welcome to the ETF's Learning Connects live session. Today, the focus is on entrepreneurial vocational education and training, lessons from Tunisia. Why should entrepreneurship be a priority in vocational education and training? What are the key steps and actions needed to implement it? Who should be involved? Does the EU have tools and resources available to help? What can we learn from the Tunisian experience? To answer these questions and many more, let's welcome our guests today. We have Elin McCallum, Director, Founder, Bantani Education. Welcome, Elin.
Thank you.
We have Lassaad Mezghani, Executive Director, Institut de la Formation à Distance de la Francophonie. Welcome, Lassaad.
Thank you very much.
And we have Mariavittoria Garlappi, Senior Human Capital Development Expert at the ETF. Welcome, Mariavittoria.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all.
And I'm your host today. I am Denise Loughran, ETF Communications Specialist. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. A warm welcome to you, all our followers. Let us know where you're coming from, post your name and details in the chat, and ask any questions you would like. Join us in the conversation. So let's get started. I'll start with you, Mariavittoria. Tell us, why should vocational education and training systems promote an entrepreneurial mindset?
Thank you, Denise, for this question. First of all, what do we mean by entrepreneurial mindset? We mean the capacity, the competence to add value in your life, be it in the professional life, be it in your society, in the economy. So this is what the EU calls a competence that every citizen should have. My colleague Elin will say a bit more later on, but this is very important to understand first that the mindset should be something that everyone in the society should have. This capacity to act upon opportunities and add value. But what more specifically a VET system, why should it promote it? Basically for employability reasons. I mean, to empower every citizen in the society to be better capable to access a job, be it as a self-employed person, be it as an entrepreneur, but also for everyone, even employed people in a company, in a public administration, so that they are active employers, adding value.
Thank you, Mariavittoria. I noticed some slight disturbance in the sound, so I hope it's our audience still managed to hear us well enough and follow the conversation. In fact, I'd say hello now to Nathalie Andros Jabourian from Lebanon. Excuse my pronunciation. Welcome and thank you for joining us. So I'll turn to you now, Lassaad, following on from Mariavittoria's response. But how can entrepreneurship become a policy priority for vocational education and training? Because obviously it starts here to make it a necessity so that it's implemented. I mean, what was the driver in Tunisia?
Well, I think first of all, to have a policy, we have to have some experience in the field. That means that vocational training institutions have already some experience and have some good practices, but not in an organized manner. And based on that, we get to some point where we see, okay, we have things happening. How can we structure that? And that leads us to have, a round table to discuss about policy. And here we need to involve all the stakeholders. So these stakeholders would be around the same table and discuss, okay, how can we structure all what we are doing or have been doing so far, but not in a structured way. So what we need, what is needed is, okay, let's have this vision. Let's share it as a vision. Then we can leave room for each one to do whatever they can do or they want to do. At the starting point, we should not, have very strict methodology or way of doing things. We're talking about entrepreneurship. No, we need entrepreneurial mindset. We need to be innovative. So we need to leave room for people to invent new programs, implement programs, test programs. The most important thing that these programs should be short and give some output. And we should not seek, at in the first step with this vision, the numbers. We should more look for quality output out of that vision. Based on that, we can develop further steps later on and have a strategy.
Okay, thank you, Lassaad. So if I've understood you correctly, practice can first inform policy, and then from policy, we go to a wider level. Am I?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to you now, Elin, what would you say then are the key steps and the actions to take that step further, to embed entrepreneurship in vocational education and training systems?
Thank you, Denise. Look, I'm going to follow on from what Lassaad said, because I really feel that kind of practice into policy is something that is important. To get this into policy, we need to work with stakeholders. Those stakeholders can be education leaders, can be educators, can be stakeholders within the ecosystem around vocational education, can be policymakers. And I think exploring through practice brings people to an understanding that this is what can be useful for social inclusion, for economic empowerment of young people moving into the labour market. And when we look at that, I think that key action of understanding, the value of these kinds of actions within practice by seeing it. In Tunisia, we saw a huge amount of value coming out of training courses that were designed for educators that then sort of, really supported the development of the policy commitment through this, growing it into something that became a real driver for change across the policy system for vocational education and training. I think that is something that when we look at supporting vocational education and training systems to embed this, we need to look at the stakeholders, looking at the different audiences involved in order to bring them to the understanding that this has value, and then show the practice to enable that value to be deepened, and then it moves more strongly into policy, which then drives better, increased delivery of entrepreneurial learning across the vocational education and training system. I hope that made sense.
Yes, it does. It really does make sense. And before I move to Mariavittoria to also ask for her input on what you've just said, I will say hello to some more members of our audience who have joined us. We have Summer Sawalka, welcome, who's working as a vocational training and is an experienced designer, VR designer, virtual reality designer, I imagine. We also have Christina Zimaj from Kosovo. Welcome, Christina. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Mariavittoria, going to you now after what Elin has just talked about. She mentioned this entrepreneurship ecosystem of stakeholders and how important it is to have them on board. But just how easy is that to have all these stakeholders on board? I mean, could you maybe describe some of the difficulties, the challenges in that for us?
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Well, indeed, promoting the entrepreneurial mindset is a collective exercise, and it must include several actors. We normally call them stakeholders, but I would like to name them a bit better so that we know whom we are talking about. And who was around this fantastic exercise together that we did as ETF with Tunisia, that is presented in the book, in the publication that is now on the chat. So there were different actors. On one side, we had the government of Tunisia, the Ministry of Employment and Vocational Education and Training. Then we had agencies providing vocational education and training, public agencies, but also representative of private sector vet centers. We had social partners, employers, trade unions. We had schools themselves. We had civil society organization. So indeed, everyone was looking for something different. And that's the beauty of it, no? Having different actors with different expectations, and each one looking for something in it for him, for her. How did we manage this very, how can I say, enriching exercise, but indeed that needed dedication to keep everyone on board? Mainly around the three actions, or let's say features. The first one has already been mentioned by Lassaad. So having a common vision. The whole story in Tunisia started by defining together all these different actors, what they wanted to define as entrepreneurial learning, as an entrepreneurial mindset. They referred to the Entrecomp, but they wanted to make something Tunisian, which is very good, because every education project or approach must be country specific. So we started by developing together, with the support of Professor Lassaad Mezghani, specifically a charter, a national charter, what Tunisia meant for entrepreneurial learning, having a common vision. This was the first step, and very important to federate everyone around the same understanding. Second aspect, super important, was the firm and the continued and the inclusive leadership that the ministry, the Tunisian Ministry of Employment and Vocational Education had carried out along 7 years. That was the duration of our cooperation. So the ministry, through even different people, ensured that there was this strategic goal for the country and ensured that everybody could be on board. The third element was the continuous exchange between policymakers and practitioners. We organized a forum every year where the practitioners, the teachers, the government agencies, the employers, the trade unions could meet and exchange about the progress that we did during the year, and they planned together, they designed together the next action. So these for me were the three key elements that ensure that all the actors were on board from the beginning to the end.
Okay, thank you, Mariavittoria. I mean, that sounds like a massive undertaking that you're describing. So going back then to my question, what for you would you describe as the main challenges to get everyone together, to get everyone around the table, from your experience in Tunisia, but also in other countries?
Yeah, that everyone could find something in it for itself, for himself or herself.
Yes.
Like for the ministry, there was a vision to ensure for everyone in the society to get through the vet system, all the students
Yes.
in the vet system to get some learning on what it means to have an entrepreneurial approach in your life.
Yes.
For the teachers, there was something different because we worked around a new module and we worked around teacher training.
Okay.
For the companies, we worked around their needs. They were expressing the soft skills that they are looking for in the youth, that they expect the vet system to provide youth with.
Okay.
So we try to give everybody something in it and to contribute.
Okay, so if I understand, everyone has their own perspective on entrepreneurial learning mindset, and that makes up the whole
Yes.
or the vision, as Lassaad has described. Okay, thank you, Mariavittoria. You mentioned teachers there, and I'll move to Lassaad now to go a little bit more in depth here about the teachers who we know are critical to making entrepreneurial learning a success within the education system, and of course particularly vocational education and training system. So tell us, Lassaad, what was your experience with teachers and what needs to be done to ensure that they are on board?
Well, teachers are an important element in this whole process because they are the people who are in contact with the students. So from the vision, as it was said, we developed a charter where everybody has expressed what their needs to be to appear on this charter, and everybody signed it. And that helped us, organizing an annual event about entrepreneurship in the vet schools. That means that there is a commitment of all stakeholders, including teachers. For the teachers, what they need to be on board and not, say, okay, I'm going to stop it. This has no meaning. They need a framework to recognize their action and make it legitimate. That means they need that vision, they need that support from the ministry where they say, okay, there is a goal from all of this. That's legitimate. We need you teachers to work on that. And this gives them the framework that they need. Another thing is that they need the training, the necessary training that gives some guidelines for teachers on the pedagogical aspects, like the learning outcomes based on intercomp, for example, methods and techniques to facilitate the courses or the trainings, and also a framework for evaluation, because we cannot make exams when we talk about entrepreneurship as other courses or other subjects. But what is important is to give some freedom to teachers, because we are, again, as I said earlier, we're talking about entrepreneurship, we are talking about innovation, so we need to give room for teachers to be innovative and think about new ways of doing things. The most important thing is that we achieve the objectives of the learning outcomes. So having the teachers on board needs, the framework, needs the training, but needs the freedom that we can give them. And that helps a lot, have a lot of teachers involved. And we experienced that with the teachers. I remember in one training, some teachers were very reluctant. What are we going to learn? And then at the end of the training, the way they were looking at the outcomes of that training was different when they saw that there is something to take out there and to work on it with their students.
Okay, thank you, Lassaad. I'll take a moment here to say hello to more guests who have joined us. We have Arshad Nazir. Welcome, Arshad. We have Gora Sila from Senegal. Welcome, Gora. And Sarish Pariyar from Nepal. Welcome all of you for joining us. Please post your questions in the chat. Our guests will be happy to answer them. Moving on now to Elin. We heard from Lassaad about teachers, the importance of support and training for teachers for entrepreneurial learning. So what about resources? What resources are needed to ensure this entrepreneurial pathway within the system? We heard earlier from Mariavittoria about the Entrecomp, the entrepreneurship framework. I'll leave it to you, Elin, to tell us more about that. And if you could, any other tools that are available to help and give support to countries implementing entrepreneurship in this education system.
I think there's a number of tools that are available out there. Entrepreneur is that common vision, that common understanding that Mariavittoria and also Lassaad mentioned the need for. Entrepreneur is a framework of competencies that really show what it means in learning terms, in what is it, how do we break down the sort of key components of being entrepreneurial. And so that's a great model for educators, for curriculum designers, for policymakers to see what is it we need to think about within the curriculum in order to bring entrepreneurial learning and the competences to be practiced and developed within learning experiences. So Entrecomp can be a very good tool, a very valuable tool that is used now around the world. And that's shown by the Entrecomp community, where you can also go, and I think the link has been put into the chat there,
Yes.
that there is a lot of resource there. There is a community there of people from over 85 countries who are joining together because they're interested in the model of Entrecomp. They're interested in entrepreneurial learning, and they're interested to meet others, people, organizations that are looking to develop this work in across lots of sectors, including vocational education. And within that, if we think of the resources that are available in ETF's also arsenal of tools, you've also got teacher booster videos, which I think would be a really nice addition, and to look through and hear from educators about what they've done and how they've done it in terms of really trying to explore bringing the entrepreneurial spirit, mindset, competences into curriculum, into their work. I think when we look at this, though, when we did this in Tunisia, when we looked at how to really sort of gather the resources together, actually, what we did for I think around about 18 months in Tunisia was really work as a co-creative body, bringing together lots of different people from the vocational education institutions. We had a team of education leaders and educators, trainers from, I think, 10, 12 institutions across Tunisia, urban and rural, importantly. And actually, that resource, that what I would call hive mind, brought together huge value of how to contextualize this within Tunisia, within the country, how to identify the pockets of practice, big practice, little practice, small changes, big changes happening in a classroom or across an institution, that really then, when we gathered that together, that helped to really shape the model of the entrepreneurial vet institution that was developed in Tunisia and isn't being used, because that allowed it to be fully understood by everybody involved, because it was from them, it was by the trainers, the education leaders in those vet education institutions. And so that resource was the most important one. It was the knowledge that was brought out, the self-efficacy, the confidence that was built through that process, and the practices that were shared, valorized, made bigger and taken to other institutions through that process, and then brought into a whole where you have this incredible resource that's being used in Tunisia to the framework of the Entrepreneurial Vet Institution that you'll find in the report.
Okay, thank you very much, Elin. So this is, the Entrecomp is an entrepreneurial competence framework developed within by the European Commission, and the ETF, for instance, has developed more resources. This framework is used in 85 countries, did you say, Elin, throughout the world?
Yeah.
Yes. And then this framework has also been used in Tunisia to support the development of its own national entrepreneurship strategy. Am I right? Yes?
Yes, absolutely. When we say it's used in 85 countries across the world, there are people within the Entrecomp community from 85 countries, and it's used in many. We can't say it's,
but it's widely
used by educators in 85 countries, certainly.
Because I'm sure the members of our audience also, we have posted the link in the chat to this framework for members of our audience who would like to to look at this further, maybe it could be of assistance to them and their work. In saying that now, I'll say hello to some more guests. We have someone from Armenia. Please share with us your name, and they have a question. Yes, where can we learn more about the program, modules, methodology? Thank you. So my colleagues will post the links in the chat. We also have Mihaila from Slovenia. Welcome, Mihaila. We have a question from Samer, which I'll address to you, Lassaad. An interesting question. Was there an element of virtual reality technology in vocational training? Was there a link of virtual reality to embedding entrepreneurship within vocational education and training?
Well, I tell the truth, for now, we did not involve any distance learning or technology related to distance learning or, other usages, but that can be used at different levels by the teachers as they feel the need for. Because what we use in core about computer science, probably they need to use that, and it's more easy for them to use it. In other settings, probably it's not. But what I know is in some courses now, especially in that's related with machinery and or construction, probably they will be using that in the future, and that can help a lot, either for construction design or for maintenance as well. But tell you the truth, from our experience, we did not use that.
Okay, thank you, Lassaad. And Samer has written that he's from Jordan and he's actually working in virtual reality in VET. So thank you for that, Lassaad. I hope that was helpful, Samer. So moving on now to Mariavittoria again. Mariavittoria, so we've heard about these, let's say, excellent examples of entrepreneurship in VET. Elin mentioned that there were some big practices, some small practices. So how do we link these up? How do we make entrepreneurship systemic within the vocational education and training system?
Thank you, Denise. First of all, I'd like to say that for ETF and for the Tunisian government, also because of the context after the democratic transition, it was very important that everyone in the society could feel empowered to contribute. And entrepreneurship as a key competence is one of the answers. So there was a willingness to make it systemic, both from the country and from ETF. That was the first element, very important, to be committed not only to do some practical, good, excellent work in some schools, but really to reach out every student in the VET system. There was this vision and this political will, both from ETF side and from the country. But then how we achieved that? I think through an integrated approach that was quite demanding, that took place over a few years, and necessarily so, which included four main elements. On one side, the policy making. So the vision that we already mentioned before, having a charter, a national charter, Tunisian charter on what we mean by entrepreneurship as a key competence, entrepreneurial learning more specifically. Then we associated a pedagogical pillar to this policy pillar. And that's what already my colleagues have a bit elaborated about, the teacher training, the curriculum development that we did. We also did some exercise on how you can assess entrepreneurial competencies. And this was the second pillar. The third pillar of this integrated approach is the constant dialogue between practitioners and policymakers. So we created a platform, a national Tunisian platform of constant exchanges between teachers, social partners, government agencies, even private citizens, students. So the need to have a policy arena where exchanges among the different partners can take place all along the years. The fourth element of this integrated approach has been to empower the vet centers to become entrepreneurial as entity, not only in the provision of entrepreneurial learning, but having an entrepreneurial strategy as vet centers vis-a-vis their ecosystem. Now, all what we have produced out of this great cooperation with Tunisia is available on open space. It's called Tunisia Case. You find all our materials and outputs under this page, on this page. Also, the Lighthouse publication includes part of our outputs. And in the bibliography of the Lighthouse, you will find references for additional resources and tools. If you allow me, I also would like to address the issue of that was asked about virtual reality.
Yes, please. Yes.
In the sense that we started a couple of months ago to reflect with our Tunisian partners on the application of artificial intelligence to entrepreneurial learning. And what we found out is that there are already available on the net virtual tutors that can support students in learning entrepreneurial competencies. We have not tested ourselves, but there is something already available. There are also a couple of publications available on the net about the use of artificial intelligence to help students learning entrepreneurial competencies.
Okay, thank
I
you.
stop here. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mariavittoria. And my colleagues have posted the links in the chat. We have Mabato Hilawi from Lesotho, who has just joined us. Welcome, Mabato. Sorry for my pronunciation. Okay, so Lassaad, we heard from Mariavittoria the many elements, to making entrepreneurial learning systemic. And she described the integrated approach that is needed. Are there some features that you would like to add to that would be specific to your experience in Tunisia?
Yes, certainly. So far, we talked about the vision, the charter, the policy, how we went about involving different stakeholders, especially teachers, and the curricular development, learning outcomes, Intercomp as a framework, and so forth. But we forgot to talk about one thing, one actor, which is very, very important stakeholder. I would say the student. I think one of the good experience we have in Tunisia, and it starts with higher education, it's going on now to vocational training, is the entrepreneurial student status. So when we give the student this status on his ID card, student ID card, so he's got something different from other students. He's recognized, and the system changed, and instead of it was top-down policy, it became bottom-up policy, because the student asked where they are, why don't we have the same status as the other institutions? And that helped and pushed decision makers in different regions, different institutions to develop the same phenomenon. In fact, I had the experience with higher education, that exactly the same project. And now that project, which started in 2018, financed by the European Union, in fact, in Tunisia and Morocco, now it is taken at more international level by the agency where I work today, which is IUF, Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie. It's agency for French-speaking universities. And we are implementing the same approach in 10 African countries. And it's becoming a real success project, because the student status changed a lot of the whole system. So everything is built around that status that we give to the student. So we had to think about what framework, what conditions, how do we teach, how to organize, the coaching of these students to become real entrepreneurs, because they are at the end of their studies. And so the Tunisian experience at that level really helped a lot in this project, which become now international. All universities in Tunisia have that status. It is nationwide now phenomenon, I would say. There are a lot of competition between universities, within universities, between students for that. And the same thing is happening, I think, progressively at vocational level as well. So I think this helps a lot.
Okay, thank you, Lassaad. That's fascinating for the students. It's like an accreditation almost, or an informal one, let's say. Elin, from your experience working, well, in Tunisia, and I know many other countries, what would you say are like the main achievements when, or the main indicators when it's been successful, a push for embedding entrepreneurial learning in the education system is working?
I think when you see real change is where you see, as Lassaad pointed out, that entrepreneurial status for students. One thing that we saw coming through in Tunisia was in 2019, they introduced a compulsory module for entrepreneurship into the curriculum for all vocational education and training students. Now, that was an important step forward. That you could see there that had been influenced by the work that had been going on with stakeholders, with teachers, with educators, trainers, with education leaders. That was a real kind of indirect outcome of the sort of the body of work activity that had been going on in entrepreneurial learning. And it also showed that shift. It really showed a shift in kind of mindset, thought, in terms of this is something important to include. And you see that in a continuing way, because all of the work that I mentioned earlier, the co-creation, we worked during COVID. We worked with all the institutions online. Once a month or so, we would all get together, talk through, reflect, collect practices, ideas, reflect again. It was really, that for me was one of the biggest achievements. You see the tangible change in the curriculum, and you see the tangible engagement and commitment of people working in the system towards change. And then you see that coming through in practices within the institutions that grow or are new within that. Now you see, and I hear more and more about, institutions in Tunisia being part of international projects which are solidly involving entrepreneurial learning. Institutions and colleagues within the VET system in Tunisia being awarded as Entrecomp champions, colleagues who are really trying to push this forward within their work, within their national and international perspectives. And that's changing the culture of vocational education and training. And that's exciting, because these competences that we're talking about, sometimes people call them the intangibles, the invisibles, but they're certainly not lacking in importance. But, they are not technical knowledge, but they're critical life skills. And to see the change, that shift happening, has been huge, really. And it's brilliant to have been involved with, and brilliant to see continuing as well.
Thank you, Elin, and welcome to Rame Likai from Kosovo. Thank you for joining us, Rame. Please, to our guests, please post your questions. Our guests will be very happy to answer them. Moving on now, Mariavittoria, I have a very provocative question for you, and I hope you won't be too bothered by it. But what would you say that entrepreneurship is not? Do you think sometimes that it's seen as a be-all and an end-all and an answer to everything?
Thank you for this provocative question, but very necessary one. Thank you, Denise. Entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial learning are not a magic stick, okay? They are a core competence for life, for employment, but they cannot solve every problem. Not that everyone can be an entrepreneur, okay? Even if the economy needs more entrepreneurs, we must be aware that this is not by training that you can, simply by training, you become an entrepreneur. We know there are some thresholds in every society about the percentage of people who can become entrepreneur, but everybody should be entrepreneurial. So that's what it should and it shouldn't be. Everyone should be entrepreneurial, even a civil servant like us, Denise, a housewife, a mother, a minister, an employee in every kind of domain should feel like I'm here to add value in what I'm doing. I'm here to be creative. I'm here to activate the resources around me to do it better, to do my job better, be it a product, be it a service. But it's not another thing that maybe entrepreneurship is a quick win. It needs, as we are saying here, a collective exercise. We didn't mention financing, but banks and also other credit systems are also very important when it comes to the component of business startups. But yes, we must distinguish what is for everybody and what is for somebody. And don't expect that within 6 months you create businesses like that will solve all problems. But we recognize that everyone can and should be entrepreneurial. Yes, that we know for sure.
Okay, thank you, Mariavittoria. Lassaad, one final question for you. You've talked about your experience in Tunisia, also working in other countries. Do you find that the entrepreneurship strategy, the national strategies that evolve, do they differ very much according to the culture of the country?
Oh yes, I think every country has its own, reality and culture, and we cannot just, take one model and implement it the same way everywhere. So, you have the standard that is adaptable. So you have the standard framework like, Intercomp, but you can adapt it to different contexts. And that's why, one of the adaptation we did is translate it in Arabic, so people can read it in their own language and better understand it. And in this exercise, it was not easy to find the right words, because in the Middle East, we use some words that we do not use in North Africa and vice versa, and for entrepreneurship, in fact. And so just, this example shows that it's not the same thing that will help work everywhere. I mean, just the words would not work the same way. So even the framework and the models we implement, but the main guidelines are there. We need teachers. We need curricula. We need to change mindsets. It's not a magic ball. Things will not change, in one day. It takes time. In Tunisia, it took a lot of time in this year we are finishing with all 11 or 12 universities to have their own, student status. Even though we started with the legal text from the ministry in 2019. So it's taking 5 years with the legal framework existing. So before that, it took, years and 10 years or more to have that legal text. So it takes time, and we should just adapt to different contexts.
Okay, thank you, Lassaad. And Elin, one final question for you. What are your favorite resources? What do you think?
I'm a big fan of the ETF Teacher Booster.
Okay.
I am, that's challenging, that one. My favorite resource actually is something called Entrepreneur Edu that we developed a number of years ago. And it's not currently online, but
it will be.
It will be.
Sure.
But the course that I've put into the chat, that I suggested and put into the chat, is actually, there's a really nice teacher educator course. They're developed by the European Commission, supported by the European Commission, by experts across Europe. And it's very much a kind of a teaching entrepreneurial competencies course. So if you want to look, if you're an educator that's listening, if you want to look into something that can show you how to apply this within teaching, that's a great opportunity. If you want to hear from teachers about their experience, look at the Teacher Booster. But if you want to meet people, are interested in finding and connecting with others around Entrecomp or entrepreneurial learning, join the Entrecomp community, because that's a space in which it's really, there are lots of activities happening, again, supported by the European Commission, and often linking back into ETF's open space, which is another great forum to come in and connect and meet people to on a very broad range of topics.
Okay, thank you, Elin. It's a lot of resources, and we have all the links in the chat, so I'm sure they'll be very valuable. Okay, we're coming to the end now. I'll turn to you, Mariavittoria, for a last word, and maybe you can tell us what's next for the ETF and entrepreneurship.
Yes, thank you. Well, my first word is to thank the very many colleagues in Tunisia and beyond that participated in this journey that is not yet ended, but that is resumed in the publication. We were many, and we all shared a goal, and that was very nice. It was very enriching. Different cultures, different understanding, but aiming at the same goal of helping especially youth in Tunisia to be better employable. That gave us a purpose, and I want to thank them all. From the various ministers up to the teachers, the directors of the vet centers, everyone in the administrations, and our lovely experts that work with us. What else can I say? It works. I mean, as Lassaad was saying, the students, very important. I still remember, I think, Elin, you also remember when we met the students, they really confirmed we made the simulation on how to assess entrepreneurial skills. And they were enthusiastic about that. So this is our future, our youth. I think we should keep the eyes on that and continue supporting. As ETF, we have a partnership of entrepreneurial vet centers that I'm leading under the European Network of Excellence that is on ETF website. So if you are part of a vocational training center in your country and you would like to know more about this partnership, where we work among different vet centers in the world on how to become more entrepreneurial schools, please get in touch, and I would be pleased to cooperate with you. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, all colleagues also behind the scene.
Okay, also from me, thanks to everyone, to our guests for joining, and to you, our audience. Stay tuned for the next Learning Connects.